Former Sports Talk Worldwide with some news from the world of boxing. So y'all know what time it is. You ain't in a rush to get concussed. Now, before I get to my main point, let's say a few things. First of all, hey, remember I was talking about the priest, and all the way up to the Pope knew about 173 cases of child molestation. Well, Pope Benedict might have to go to jail. They're gonna bring him in court, make him answer some damn questions. They should have, right? I probably shouldn't have led with that. It makes it sound all, like it's a bad thing. But hey, we got to stop that. Stuff like that has to be done. It's the Catholic Church, it's the Pope. Get your stuff together, bottom line. Now, in the world of boxing, right? In the world of boxing, there's a few things going down. I ain't going to talk about them all, but, like for example, you got if Anthony Joshua going to step aside or not. He's got a formal offer now. Let's see what he's going to do, because we heard that he was going to do it, and he came out and said he wasn't. Is he going to step aside, Anthony Joshua, and let the undisputed fight happen? We don't know yet, but he's got a, formal offer. Let's see what happens. In a day or two, we're going to know something about that right now. But I will note that he came out talking about, he didn't say, hey, I ain't stepping aside. I'm going to get my belts. He said more or less, I haven't received an offer yet. Unless you hear it from me, you don't know. That's not categorically denying that you're going to take a step aside. So, to me, it looks 50-50. We'll see what happens going forward with that. Another pretty good news, but I don't believe it, right, is in the lightweight division, we can also be trying to get undisputed, right? We do know that George Kambosos got 3 of the damn belts, and 1 belt's out there still with Devin Haney, right? And ain't nobody trying to fight Devin Haney in lightweight division, right? And people who don't know, Ryan Garcia is mandatory, didn't want to. Jojo Diaz was his mandatory, didn't want to, but had to, because he couldn't get Ryan Garcia, right? Teofimo Lopez, after beating Lomachenko, could have fought Devin Haney for undisputed, didn't want to. And Kambosos is dragging his feet. But what we're hearing now is they're in negotiations to try to have a fight in April. Let's see if it happens. I'm a glasses half empty kind of dude. They're doing everything to not make it happen. Let's see if it does. I would be surprised. I know that Kambosos is enjoying himself in Australia. The Australian Open with the tennis tournament, he showed up and everybody went crazy. So they know, they've registered what he has accomplished, which is good. Just this year I'm not watching Australian Open because I'm boycotting it. Right? They didn't let Djokovic play to try to get his 21st Grand Slam because he's not vaccinated. And, listen, if you're not vaccinated, are you more infectious? Are you going to give it to somebody quicker? Right? He's rich enough to give you a test every 2 hours to show he's negative. Right? People are not asking the right questions when it comes to that, but I'm not going to even get into that. But if you ain't going to let him come and he's willing to give you negative tests on an hourly basis, then whatever. But what happens is people who are vaccinated, right? I've watched tendencies that we have, right? And a lot of us are having this tendency. You're going into places already showing your QR code when ain't nobody even asking you, because you're so happy that you can go in and other ones can't. Well, I'm a black dude. I know how it's like to not get in clubs, especially in Europe. When you don't get in clubs if they don't know you because you're black, but they're in the background playing black music. But the people can't. That's what people who are codes and showing them before people ain't nobody even want to see it yet. You see what I'm saying? So, but that's another story. Let's get to the story. The story is this. I saw an article, an American article. Because normally when you see a title like this, I know it's not American. And the article said, hey, is Canelo Alvarez ducking Demetrius Andrade? An American article. Like, wow, that's crazy. Because the answer is hell yeah. Right? It is. It's too long. Anybody that's just saying he's not, it's too long. And in the article, it's about basically some of us who've probably seen that. On the zone, you had Chris Mannix, who has, not been saying the things he should, right? He's been, neglecting black fighters, actually. And he's been called out recently by Demetrius Andrade himself. After his last fight, after the press conference, he's been called out a few times. So Chris Mannix, who, he's gotten on it. He's talked to these guys, Ak and Barak, these British guys, and, they going on about Canelo did not avoid Demetrius Andrade, even though it's obvious because he was 154, 160. But what they fail to realize is, like, somebody said, hey, well, he went to fight Kovalev, and Andrade wouldn't have fought Kovalev. Only Canelo would have done that. Yeah, right. They fail to realize to say because people don't want to say this in articles, that Canelo could have fought Andrade for undisputed at 160 instead of Kovalev. He went and waited for Kovalev, right? He could have fought Andrade on his Mexican holiday. Was no problems. Andrade was only going to get about 10. He was going to get 40. But instead, he waited for Kovalev to fight in November, and Kovalev didn't have that much recovery time. You seen it in the fight, right? But then to say that Demetrius Andrade wouldn't have fought Kovalev is just showing you. I'm going to put the article in the description box, but I'm just going to read a couple of sentences for you guys to see. You know, this is the kind of stuff you don't see in American articles, right? This is, you know, the name of it is Canelo Alvarez ducking Demetrius Andrade. We'll read a little bit and then you guys can read the rest. Bottom line, it's become noticeable by fans that Canelo Alvarez has never shown any interest in fighting the undefeated former two-division world champion Demetrius Andrade over the years, despite the two fighting in the same weight class for long periods. Does that sound like something that in America gonna be written? Because it's the truth. You know, America ain't got no time to be writing the truth about no black fighters. But anyway, the question is, why doesn't Canelo want to fight Andrade? It is because he's a terrible fighter? They meant horrible, right? But terrible fighter? Or is it because he's just too much of a threat? Many box fans believe that the tall, powerful, slick southpaw Andrade, 31-0 with 19 KOs, by the way, possesses all the elements needed to defeat the 5'8 Canelo and make him look silly in the process. Now, that silly in the process is what I always tell you guys. You know, you wonder why people will fight a person that can possibly knock them out. You know, they got a lot of knockout power. They'll fight them before those slick guys. Right, you know, the Demetrius Andrades, the Devin Haney's, the Shakur Stevensons, and, you know, Jerron Boots Ennis is coming. But I'm just saying those three for a long time, the Terrence Crawfords, they can never get the major fights. You know, Pacquiao wasn't going to fight Crawford. Canelo ain't going to fight Andrade. Nobody in the lightweight division going to fight Haney, but they'll call him feather-fisted. It's because of that looking silly part, right? Because you can get embarrassed in here, and it's easier, you know, to get knocked the hell out and just come back and say, man, I made a mistake. Next time I'll be all right. I ain't gonna let that happen again. But when you get beat over 12 rounds and dominated, just not much to say after a fight. That's why. That's why all of the slick fighters can't get fights. So that's what this is saying. Now, if you watch Canelo struggle against arguably lesser fighters than Demetrius and Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Platt in 2021, you can't help but derive at the likelihood that Andrade would tear him a new backside. It's an American article. Doesn't sound like it, right? So basically, it looks to some like Canelo fears Andrade and he would do anything he can to avoid facing him. If that means vacating the WBO 168-pound title, that's a predictable move. Andrade could potentially vacate his WBO 160-pound title and ask the World Boxing Organization to install him as Canelo's mandatory at 168 with the organization, right? And then it goes on. Canelo should have fought Andrade years ago. Stuff that we talk about. You don't see in the articles. Then you see, you know, Akin Barak trying to give reasons that Canelo is not really avoiding him and stuff like that. Well, listen. You can't be in the same division in parallel universes and not fighting a guy. It's obvious that he has an issue with fighting Andrade, you know, and you can call Andrade a horrible fighter after fighting no one as good as him ever. Like, I'm telling you, not even Mayweather, right, as good as Andrade against Canelo. And my point there is just because Andrade is the same size. What Mayweather did was extremely awesome. Extremely awesome. I get it. But Andrade is even a little bit bigger than, you know, he's bigger than Mayweather. He's Canelo's size and got the reach on Canelo. It's going to be an issue. It's going to be an issue with him. Now, you know, that Canelo can beat anybody. Let's make sure that's clear. But this guy is an obvious problem, and the media has helped him. So I'm going to say this. The fact that Terrence Crawford has a lawsuit against Bob Arum, the fact that Demetrius Andrade fronted Chris Mannix in front of the world on DAZN twice are helping in boxing. And this is an example of it, because this is an American article that you would never see. An article like this I expect to be somewhere in Europe somewhere. But an American article to give you the title of the article is just something you just don't read in America. It's Canelo Alvarez ducking Demetrius Andrade. Ain't no American article writing that. You white boys in America ain't trying to have that up there. And then Chris Mannix is just basically, you know, saying these things. He was pro Andrade in this argument with Akin Barak, but because he's like he says, he's been yelled at by Demetrius Andrade on several occasions now, which has got to happen. And that lawsuit against Crawford, like I told you before, Crawford against Bob Arum, is important just so the facts can start coming out. And that's all we need. That's why back in Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, I didn't really want to see the fight. I'd rather have seen them in court so people can see some facts. That's more important than fighting to me. So these things like this I focus on. There's a lot of big news that people might think is bigger than this, but this here is Canelo Alvarez ducking Demetrius Andrade in an American article. Guys, trust me, that is huge. And the answer to the question is hell yes. Resoundingly hell yes. You can't be in the same person in same divisions for 8 years and nobody fighting and both champions, right? That just doesn't work like that. Most awesome champions ain't want nobody else in their division that's got belts and that people are saying are better than them. That wouldn't happen to my GOAT, Lennox Lewis. That ain't happening to Roy Jones, even though he had Mishashowski for a while there, right? That ain't gonna happen to anybody. Deontay Wilder didn't want that. You see what I'm saying? Anybody, Devin Haney don't want that. Terrence Crawford definitely don't want that. No Negro League fighters are really wanting that. You ain't gonna have nobody in my division that people are calling better than me, or that people think is as good as I am. You see what I'm saying? That's what the real champions don't want. They want it to be like, I'm the baddest, and y'all good, but I'm the baddest. That's what most real champions want. So we're not asking for too much here is what I'm trying to say. Doma Sports Talk Worldwide. And we up out of here, y'all.